Hello, family. Enjoy this relaxing moment with Surly Tales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The cacophony of Lagos traffic roared like a restless beast outside the tinted windows of the luxury car. Bayo Oladimeji adjusted the lapel of his tailored suit as he stared out at the chaos. He was heading to a board meeting for one of his family's many businesses, a routine he had grown weary of. Bayo, as his friends called him, was the son of Chief Oladimeji, one of Nigeria's wealthiest and most influential businessmen. Yet, despite his enviable lifestyle, Bayo felt trapped. For as long as he could remember, his life had been curated, drenched in wealth and expectations. His father had groomed him to inherit the family empire, but Bayo had different plans. While his family saw success as an empire built on status and acquisitions, Bayo dreamed of authenticity. Real people, real connections, real love. "Are you all right, sir?" the driver asked, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. Bayo forced a smile. "I'm fine, Kingsley." But he wasn't fine. His wealth, instead of being a blessing, had become a gilded cage. Friendships were transactional, and romantic relationships often came with hidden agendas. No one saw him. They only saw the son of Chief Oladimeji. Bayo wanted more. A radical decision. Later that evening, in the privacy of his upscale Ikoyi apartment, Bayo poured himself a glass of red wine and dialed his best friend, Tund. Tund picked up almost immediately, his boisterous voice filling the line. "Ah, Bayo. What's up?" "Let me guess, another boring meeting with the suits?" "Worse," Bayo replied. "My dad wants me to attend some high-profile gala next week to meet the daughter of one of his business partners." Tund chuckled. "And you don't want to? She might be beautiful. Beautiful or not, I'm tired of being paraded like some prize stallion. I need a break from all of this." Tund's tone shifted. "All right, so what are you thinking?" Bayo hesitated. "I want to experience life from a different perspective. No mansions, no luxury cars, no endless bank account. I want to live like a regular person for a while." "You mean, like going undercover?" Tund asked, intrigued. "Exactly. I've already thought it through. I'll take a break from the family businesses and live modestly. I found a mid-level tech company in Ikeja. They're hiring security guards. I start next week." Tund burst into laughter. Wait. You, a security guard? What if someone recognizes you?" "I'll keep a low profile. Change my look. No one will know." Tund whistled. "This is madness." "I support it. Let's see how long you last." The transformation. Over the next few days, Bayo prepared meticulously. He traded his designer suits for thrifted jeans and polos, let his beard grow out, and even learned basic Yoruba phrases to blend in. On Monday morning, he arrived at TechCore Solutions, wearing a faded security uniform and carrying a lunchbox. "Good morning," he greeted the head of security, an older man named Mr. Dada, who gave him a skeptical look. "You're the new recruit?" Mr. Dada asked, eyeing him from head to toe. "Yes, sir," Bayo replied, lowering his gaze to avoid suspicion. Mr. Dada grunted. "All right, we'll see if you can handle the job. Follow me." As Bayo was shown around, he felt a thrill of excitement. The office was nothing like the marble halls of his family's empire. It was modest but bustling with energy. Employees moved about with purpose, chatting in a mix of English, Yoruba, and Pidgin. For the first time in years, Bayo felt invisible, and he loved it. Meeting Halima. At the reception desk, a young woman caught his eye. She was typing furiously on a laptop, her brows furrowed in concentration. Her outfit was simple, a fitted Ankara dress, but she carried herself with confidence. "That's Halima," Mr. Dada said, noticing Bayo's lingering gaze. "Our receptionist. Sharp girl, but don't try your luck. She doesn't mix work with nonsense." Bayo nodded, suppressing a smile. Halima glanced up briefly, her warm brown eyes meeting his for a fleeting moment. She gave a polite nod before returning to her work. For the rest of the day, Bayo familiarized himself with his duties, monitoring the entrance, checking IDs, and patrolling the premises. It was a far cry from the high-stakes decisions he was used to, but it felt grounding. An unexpected encounter. During his lunch break, Bayo found a quiet corner near the staff cafeteria. As he unwrapped his modest meal, Halima walked by, carrying a plate of jollof rice. She paused, noticing his solitary spot. "Why are you eating here?" she asked, her tone curious but not unkind. "The cafeteria has plenty of seats." Bayo looked up, startled. "I didn't want to bother anyone." Halima raised an eyebrow. "Bother? Everyone's too busy enjoying their food to notice. Come on, join us." Before he could protest, she led him to a table where a group of employees was laughing and chatting. Bayo introduced himself as Ade, his middle name, and soon found himself immersed in their conversations. Halima, sitting across from him, occasionally glanced his way, her expression unreadable. By the end of the day, Bayo couldn't stop thinking about her. She wasn't just beautiful, she was kind, confident, and unpretentious. She embodied everything he had been searching for. The beginning of a new life. Over the next few days, Bayo settled into his new routine. He learned the quirks of his coworkers, the rhythms of the office, and the unspoken rules of Lagos's working class. Each day brought new challenges, from dealing with difficult visitors to navigating the occasional power outage. Yet he felt more alive than ever. His interactions with Halima remained polite but distant. She was friendly enough, but Bayo sensed a guardedness in her. Still, he couldn't help but admire her resilience. He overheard snippets of conversations about her struggles, supporting her mother, saving for her dreams, and it only deepened his respect for her. One evening, as he locked up the office, he found her waiting at the gate. "Your uniform suits you," she said with a teasing smile. Bayo chuckled. "And your dress suits you." Halima laughed, a soft, musical sound. "Good night, Edith." "Good night, Halima," he replied, watching her disappear into the night. As he walked home to his rented one-room apartment, Bayo realized he had made the right decision. For the first time, he was living, not as a millionaire, but as a man discovering life, love, and himself. Halima Abubakar stood in front of her mother's tailoring shop in Ajij, tying the loose ends of her headscarf as the early morning sun painted the street in hues of gold. The small shop was lined with racks of colorful Ankara fabrics, but business had been slow lately. Halima glanced at her wristwatch. It was barely 6:30 a.m., and she had to catch a Danfo to Ikeja if she wanted to be at Techcore Solutions on time. Her mother, Mrs. Bello, emerged from the shop, carrying a basket of half-finished garments. "Halima, you're going so early again?" she asked, concern etched in her tired eyes. "Yes, Mama. You know how Lagos traffic is," Halima replied, forcing a smile. Mrs. Bello sighed. "You work so hard. When will you have time for yourself, eh? Or time to find a husband?" Halima laughed lightly, adjusting the strap of her bag. "Mama, when I make enough money to open my own fashion business, we can talk about husbands." Mrs. Bello shook her head but smiled, her pride evident. Halima was the family's backbone, the one who had stepped up after her father's death 5 years ago. Though the burden was heavy, Halima carried it with grace. Dreams deferred. As the Danfo rattled along the bumpy road, Halima thought about her dreams. She had always loved fashion, inheriting her mother's talent for design. Her dream was to own a boutique that fused traditional African fabrics with contemporary styles. But dreams required money, a luxury she didn't have. Her job at Techcore paid enough to keep the family afloat, but there was little left for savings. Still, she was determined. She had started sketching designs in her spare time, hoping that one day, her work would catch the eye of someone influential. The bus jolted to a stop, jerking her out of her thoughts. She hurriedly paid the conductor and stepped off, navigating the busy streets of Ikeja. By the time she arrived at Techcore, the office was already buzzing. A glimpse of Halima. Bayo, now fully settled into his role as Ade the security guard, watched Halima walk through the gates. She moved with a quiet confidence, greeting the staff and flashing a polite smile at him. For some reason, her presence made the mundane feel extraordinary. "Morning, Ade," she said in passing. "Good morning," he replied, his voice steady despite the quickening pace of his heart. As she disappeared into the building, Bayo leaned back against the gate, his thoughts drifting. Halima was unlike anyone he'd met before. Her kindness, her determination, and her unassuming beauty fascinated him. But he reminded himself of his goal, to live a simple life and find authentic connections. Rushing into a relationship could complicate everything. Test of character. Later that afternoon, the office was thrown into disarray when a disgruntled delivery man stormed in, demanding payment for a package. The receptionist who usually handled such issues was absent, and the scene quickly escalated. Halima stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "Please, sir, let's discuss this reasonably. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." The man, visibly frustrated, argued loudly. Staff members began to gather, murmuring among themselves. Bayo watched from his post, ready to intervene if things got out of hand. Halima remained composed, her tone soothing as she explained the company's payment policies and promised to escalate the issue to management. Her tact and patience diffused the situation, and the delivery man eventually left, albeit reluctantly. As the crowd dispersed, Bayo approached her. "You handled that well," he said, admiration evident in his tone. Halima smiled faintly. "Thank you, Ade. Sometimes, all people need is someone to listen." Her words lingered with him long after she walked away. She wasn't just kind, she was wise beyond her years. The struggles of the everyday. That evening, as Halima waited for a bus home, she checked her phone. Her bank balance stared back at her, a stark reminder of her financial limitations. Between rent, groceries, and her mother's medical expenses, there was little room for anything else. The bus ride home was cramped and noisy, but Halima was used to it. As she leaned against the window, her thoughts wandered to the security guard, Ade. He was different from the other staff. Quiet, observant, yet always ready to help. There was a warmth in his eyes that intrigued her, though she reminded herself not to get distracted. Her focus had to remain on her goals. When she arrived home, her mother was already cooking dinner. The aroma of egusi soup filled the small apartment. "How was work today?" Mrs. Bello asked, setting the table. "It was fine," Halima replied, sitting down and massaging her temples. "Just the usual." Her mother studied her for a moment. "You're doing too much, Halima. You need to rest." "I will, Mama. Soon." But Halima knew there was no rest in sight. Not yet. Chance encounter. The next day, Halima stayed late at the office, catching up on paperwork. When she finally emerged, the sky was dark, and the streets were quieter than usual. She headed to the gate, where Bayo was locking up. "You're still here?" he asked, surprised. "Had some work to finish," she replied. "The buses will be scarce at this time." "I can walk you to the main road," Bayo offered. "It's not safe to be out alone." Halima hesitated but nodded. "Thank you." They walked in silence for a while, the distant hum of traffic filling the air. Halima stole a glance at him. There was something comforting about his presence, unassuming, yet protective. "You don't talk much, do you?" she asked, breaking the silence. Bayo chuckled softly. "Not much to say." Halima smiled. "Well, that's rare. Most men I know love to talk about themselves." "Maybe I'm not like most men," he replied, his tone light but sincere. They reached the main road, where Halima flagged down a bus. As she climbed in, she turned back to him. "Thanks for walking me." "Anytime," Bayo said, watching as the bus drove away. As he walked back to his modest apartment, he couldn't help but feel a growing connection to her. Halima was more than he had imagined, resilient, intelligent, and kind. Yet, he reminded himself to tread carefully. He was still just Ade to her, a lowly security guard. The truth of his identity could complicate everything. The early morning sun filtered through the tall glass windows of TechCore Solutions, casting long shadows across the office floor. Bayo adjusted his security uniform, standing at the main entrance, watching as employees filed in. Among them was Halima, her radiant smile momentarily lighting up his morning. She greeted him with her usual warmth, her ankara dress swaying as she walked to her desk. Bayo sighed. his thoughts tangled in a web of admiration and self-doubt. He had grown fond of Halima, too fond, perhaps, but he wasn't sure how to navigate his feelings. Was it fair to pursue something while hiding the truth of his identity? A growing connection. Halima's day was already chaotic by mid-morning. The phones rang incessantly, and the printer jammed just as she was about to submit an important report. She felt a headache forming, but she pushed through with her characteristic determination. During lunch, she escaped to a quiet corner of the office garden, hoping to clear her mind. To her surprise, she found Bayo there, eating his modest meal. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, holding her plate of rice and beans. "Of course not," Bayo replied, scooting over to make space on the bench. They ate in silence for a while, the rustling leaves and distant hum of traffic creating a soothing backdrop. Then Halima spoke. "You seem different," she said, glancing at him. "Not like the other security guards." "How so?" Bayo asked, feigning nonchalance. Halima shrugged. "You're quieter, more observant. Like you're watching life from the outside." Bayo chuckled. "Maybe I just like to keep things simple." Halima nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "Simplicity is underrated. Sometimes I wish life could be simpler." Bayo wanted to ask what she meant but decided against it. He didn't want to pry. Instead, he offered a small smile. "Sometimes, simplicity is all we need." Their conversation drifted to lighter topics: music, movies, and their shared love for street food. For the first time in a while, Halima felt herself relax, and Bayo found himself smiling more than he had in weeks. Tun's advice. That evening, Bayo met up with his best friend, Tund, at a small suya spot in Yaba. The smoky aroma of grilled meat filled the air as they sat at a plastic table, their plates piled high. "So, how's the undercover billionaire life treating you?" Tund asked, grinning. Bayo rolled his eyes. "It's not about the money, Tund. You know that." Yeah, I know. "So, tell me, how's the girl?" "What girl?" Bayo asked, feigning ignorance. Tund raised an eyebrow. "Don't play dumb. The receptionist you keep mentioning. Halima, right?" Bayo sighed, picking at his suya. "She's amazing. Smart, kind, and hardworking. But I don't know how to approach her without revealing who I really am." Tund leaned back, crossing his arms. "You're overthinking it. She likes you for who you are now. Isn't that what you wanted? To find someone who doesn't care about your wealth?" "Yes, but what happens when she finds out the truth? Will she feel betrayed?" Tund shrugged. "That's a risk you'll have to take. But if you keep hiding, you might lose her before you even get the chance." Bayo nodded, his mind racing. Tund was right, but it didn't make the situation any easier. A crisis at work. The next day, chaos erupted in the office when a major client threatened to pull out of a deal. The managers were in a frenzy, trying to salvage the situation, but tensions ran high. Halima, who had been quietly taking notes during the meeting, suddenly spoke up. "Excuse me, but maybe we could offer a discount on the next project to show goodwill," she suggested, her voice steady despite the roomful of senior staff. The room fell silent. Halima's idea was simple yet effective. The managers exchanged glances before one of them nodded. That could work. Bayo, standing at his usual post, watched in admiration as Halima's suggestion turned the tide. She had a natural ability to lead, even in the face of adversity. Later that evening, as Halima was leaving, Bayo stopped her at the gate. "You were impressive today," he said, his tone sincere. Halima smiled, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "Thank you, Ade. I just did what needed to be done." "You did more than that," Bayo replied. "You made a difference." Halima's smile widened, and for a moment, they stood in comfortable silence. Then she said, "Good night, Ade." "Good night, Halima," he replied, watching as she disappeared into the night. A moment of vulnerability. That weekend, Bayo found himself wandering the bustling streets of Ajij. He had learned from casual conversations that Halima lived somewhere in the area, though he had no intention of intruding on her life. Still, he felt a strange pull toward the neighborhood, a desire to understand her world better. As he walked past a small tailoring shop, he spotted her through the open doorway. She was seated at a sewing machine, focused on her work. Her mother, whom Bayo recognized from a photograph on Halima's desk, was pinning fabric to a mannequin nearby. Bayo hesitated, unsure if he should approach. Before he could decide, Halima looked up and spotted him. "Ade," she called, her voice tinged with surprise. "What are you doing here?" "I was just exploring," Bayo said awkwardly. "I didn't mean to intrude." Halima smiled, wiping her hands on a piece of fabric. "You're not intruding. Come in." Bayo stepped into the shop, glancing around at the vibrant fabrics and neatly arranged tools. The space was small but full of life, much like its owner. "This is my mother," Halima said, introducing Mrs. Bello. "It's nice to meet you, Ma," Bayo said, bowing slightly. Mrs. Bello smiled warmly. "Welcome. Any friend of Halima's is welcome here." As they chatted, Bayo learned more about Halima's dreams of owning her own fashion business. Her passion was evident, and Bayo found himself even more drawn to her. When he finally left, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had found something he had been searching for, not just in Halima, but in the life she represented. It was simple, honest, and real. Bayo's days as Ade the security guard were becoming increasingly complicated. His growing feelings for Halima were undeniable, but so was the weight of his hidden identity. Each passing day deepened his connection to her, and he knew he couldn't keep up the facade forever. But how could he reveal the truth without losing her trust? Chief Oladimeji's interference. The peace of Bayo's undercover life was shattered one Friday evening when his father, Chief Oladimeji, called him unexpectedly. Bayo was at his small apartment in Ajij, reading over a magazine he'd borrowed from a coworker. "Bayo, where are you?" his father's authoritative voice demanded over the phone. "Out of town, Baba," Bayo replied, knowing better than to tell the truth. "I heard from one of your friends that you've been avoiding business meetings. Are you deliberately trying to disgrace this family?" Bayo sighed. "I'm not avoiding anything. I just needed a break." "A break? Do you know how many people are depending on our empire? I raised you to be a leader, not to abandon your responsibilities. Return to Lagos immediately." "I'm fine where I am, Baba," Bayo said firmly. "I'll return when I'm ready." The line went dead. Chief Oladimeji wasn't used to being defied, and Bayo knew there would be consequences. Halima's suspicions. The next week, Halima noticed something different about Ade. He seemed distracted, his usual quiet confidence replaced with unease. She observed him from her desk, wondering if something was wrong. During lunch, she approached him in the office garden. "Ade, are you okay? You've been distant lately." Bayo hesitated, searching for the right words. "I've just had a lot on my mind." Halima nodded, sensing he wasn't ready to open up. "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Her kindness only made Bayo feel guiltier. He wanted to tell her everything, but the risk felt insurmountable. The unraveling. Chief Oladimeji wasn't one to let things slide. Determined to bring his son back into the family fold, he hired a private investigator to locate Bayo. It didn't take long for the investigator to uncover his son's whereabouts and his unconventional new role. The chief was furious. His son, a security guard? It was an affront to the Oladimeji name. Without consulting Bayo, he decided to intervene. A public confrontation. One afternoon, as the staff at TechCore were busy with their tasks, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the gate. Bayo was at his post, ensuring visitors signed in, when the car doors swung open. Chief Oladimeji stepped out, his imposing figure radiating authority. "Bayo," he bellowed, striding toward his son. Bayo froze, his heart sinking. The office fell silent as employees turned to watch the unfolding drama. Halima, standing near the reception desk, looked on in confusion. "What are you doing here?" Bayo asked, his voice low but steady. "Enough of this nonsense," the chief thundered. "You're coming home right now. This charade has gone on long enough." "Charade?" Halima whispered to herself, her brow furrowed. Bayo clenched his fists, his face a mix of frustration and shame. "This is my life, Baba. You can't just barge in and demand I leave." Chief Oladimeji scoffed. "Your life? You're the heir to a billion naira empire, And you're wasting your time pretending to be a security guard? What is wrong with you? Halima's eyes widened as the realization dawned. Ade wasn't just a security guard. He was a millionaire hiding in plain sight. The chief turned to Halima, his gaze sharp. And you, stay away from my son. You have no idea what you're getting into. Baba, stop. Bayo snapped, stepping between them. Halima's voice trembled as she spoke. Is this true, Ade? Are you? Bayo turned to her, his expression pained. Halima, I can explain. Explain what? She interrupted, her voice rising. That you've been lying to me this whole time? Halima's anguish. Halima left the office that day, her emotions in turmoil. She felt betrayed, not just by the revelation of Bayo's identity but by the fact that he had hidden it from her. All their moments together, their growing connection, had it all been a lie? That evening, she sat in her small apartment, staring at her sketches but unable to focus. Her mother, noticing her distress, asked gently, "What's wrong, Halima?" "It's Ade, or whatever his name is," Halima replied bitterly. "He's not who I thought he was." Mrs. Bello placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "People make mistakes, my dear. The question is, does he care for you? If he does, then maybe you should listen to what he has to say." Halima sighed, her mother's words stirring a conflict within her. She wasn't sure she could face Bayo, but part of her wanted to hear his side. Bayo's decision. Meanwhile, Bayo wrestled with his father's interference and Halima's reaction. He knew he couldn't go on like this. If he truly cared for Halima, he owed her honesty, no more half-truths, no more secrets. Tund, ever the voice of reason, offered his perspective. "You've got to fight for her, Bayo. But you also need to respect her feelings. Give her time, but don't give up." With that advice in mind, Bayo resolved to make things right. A step toward reconciliation. The next day, Halima found Bayo waiting for her outside the tailoring shop. He looked different, humbled, vulnerable. "Halima, please," he began, his voice earnest. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know how to tell you." Halima crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "You should have trusted me." "I know," Bayo admitted. "But everything I told you, about valuing simplicity, about wanting something real, it was all true. I became Ade because I wanted to escape the superficial world I grew up in. And then I met you, and you made me realize what I'd been missing." Halima's eyes softened, though her stance remained firm. "So what now? What happens when your father comes back, demanding you abandon this life?" Bayo stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "This isn't just about my father or my wealth. This is about us. I'll fight for you, Halima, if you'll let me." She looked at him for a long moment, her emotions a mix of doubt, hope, and something she couldn't quite name. Finally, she spoke. "I need time, Bayo. Time to figure out if I can trust you again." Bayo nodded, understanding her hesitation. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." The days after Halima's revelation were tense and uncertain. For Bayo, every moment without her felt like an eternity. He respected her need for space, but his heart ached to bridge the gap between them. For Halima, the weight of his deception lingered, but so did the undeniable connection they shared. Trust was hard to rebuild, but something deep inside her told her Bayo's intentions had been genuine. Chief Oladimeji's ultimatum. At the Oladimeji estate in Ikoyi, Chief Oladimeji paced his lavish living room, his frustration growing. His son's defiance was not just a personal affront, it was a threat to the family's carefully cultivated reputation. Bayo's mother, a gentler presence in the family, sat on the plush sofa, her face lined with concern. "Bayo's behavior is unacceptable," the chief declared. "He's humiliating us. How can he throw away everything we've built? Maybe he's searching for something we can't provide," Bayo's mother said softly. "Searching? For what? Poverty? A nobody?" The chief's voice rose. "I'll put an end to this nonsense. Either he returns to his responsibilities, or I'll disinherit him." "That won't bring him back," his wife said, her tone firm. "You've always valued control over understanding. Maybe it's time to listen to him." The chief scoffed but said nothing, her words lingering in the air. Halima's self-reflection. Back in Ajij, Halima spent her evenings reflecting on her life and her feelings for Bayo. She replayed their moments together, the quiet conversations, the laughter, the shared understanding. Despite his lie, she couldn't deny that Bayo had treated her with respect and care, unlike anyone else she had ever known. Her mother noticed her restlessness and approached her one evening. "Halima, you've been quiet these past few days." "I'm just thinking, Mama," Halima replied, fiddling with a piece of fabric. "About Ade?" her mother asked knowingly. Halima nodded. "He lied to me, Mama. I can't stop thinking about him." Mrs. Bello smiled gently. "Sometimes, people make mistakes for reasons we don't understand. The question is, can you see his heart beyond the mistake?" Halima pondered her mother's words. Deep down, she knew the answer. A public declaration. Determined to prove his love, Bayo decided to take a bold step. With Tun's help, he planned a surprise at TechCore. On a Friday afternoon, just as the office was winding down for the week, Bayo walked in, not as Ade the security guard, but as himself. The staff stared in astonishment as he entered, dressed in a simple yet elegant suit. He carried a bouquet of flowers and looked every bit the confident man he had hidden from them. Halima, sitting at her desk, froze when she saw him. "Bayo," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He approached her, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Halima, I know I've hurt you, and I can't undo the past. But I'm here now as the man I truly am. I don't care about wealth or status, all I care about is you." The office erupted into murmurs as employees gathered around, curious and captivated by the unfolding scene. Bayo continued, his voice unwavering. "You've shown me what it means to live with purpose and integrity. You've inspired me in ways I can't put into words. All I'm asking for is a chance to prove myself to you." Halima stood, her emotions a whirlwind. For a moment, the office noise faded, and it was just the two of them. "You hurt me, Bayo," she said, her voice trembling. "But I can see that you're trying. I care about you too." The crowd broke into applause as Bayo handed her the flowers, his relief evident. Confronting Chief Oladimeji. News of Bayo's public declaration spread quickly, reaching Chief Oladimeji within hours. Furious, he summoned his son to the estate. "You've embarrassed this family enough," the chief barked when Bayo arrived. "Ending this foolish relationship is non-negotiable." Bayo met his father's glare with calm determination. "Baba, this isn't about you or the family's reputation. This is about my life. I won't give up on Halima." "She's beneath you," the chief snapped. "What could she possibly offer you?" "More than wealth or status ever could," Bayo replied. "She's genuine, hardworking, and kind. The type of person who values people for who they are, not what they have." The chief's face softened for a moment before he turned away. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe I am," Bayo said. "But it's mine to make." Love prevails. Over the next few weeks, Bayo and Halima worked on rebuilding their trust. Bayo introduced her to his mother, who welcomed her warmly, much to Halima's surprise. The older woman saw in Halima the qualities her son had always longed for: authenticity, humility, and strength. As for Chief Oladimeji, he remained distant, though his wife assured Bayo that time would soften his stance. "Your father has a hard exterior, but deep down he wants what's best for you," she said. In Ajij, Halima continued to pursue her dreams, this time with Bayo's support. He helped her set up a small fashion studio, where she began designing and selling her creations. Their bond grew stronger as they navigated their differences, united by their shared values and love. A grand reveal. 6 months later, Bayo and Halima held a small ceremony to celebrate the opening of Halima's fashion studio. Friends, family, and co-workers gathered to support her. Even Chief Oladimeji attended, albeit reluctantly. During the event, Bayo took the microphone, his voice filled with pride. "This isn't just a celebration of a business. It's a celebration of resilience, dreams, and love. Halima has taught me that true wealth isn't measured in money but in the relationships we build and the lives we touch." He turned to Halima, his eyes shining. "And for me, she's the greatest treasure of all." The crowd erupted in applause as Halima smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. Chief Oladimeji, standing in the corner, finally let a small smile escape, his wife nudging him approvingly. Epilogue. A love rooted in truth. As they stood together in the bustling studio, surrounded by friends and family, Bayo and Halima knew they had found something rare and precious. Their journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. In the end, love, honest, imperfect, and unwavering, had triumphed. And in each other, they had found the life they had always dreamed of. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.